Hi, I see you.
Hi.
Yeah, so I was just telling in general out to the world that I welcome everyone to a series we call 10 Questions. We, as a foundation, are interested in everything culture, heritage, and languages. With this in mind, we have created this series called 10 Questions, where we put forth 10 questions which we think are important to the expert for the day. So today we are talking to Amrita. She's the founder of Nashik Heritage Trails. And she is all set to help us rediscover the fascinating city of Nashik in all its authenticity as she's a local there. And we are here to discuss her experience of organizing, engaging heritage trails and a little about the history of Nashik as well. So, Amrita's first question to you would be to give us a recap of how your life has been and a quick introduction to everyone.
Okay, I'll try to make it very quick. First of all, thank you so much for having me on 10 questions. I think it's a very good idea. And whatever questions you've so far shared with me, I think they sum up what I do and what I want to do and what is Nashik Heritage Trails all about. So just to give you a quick idea how I arrived here and how it all started. Actually, I studied economics and I started my career as a quantitative research analyst in financial sector. But I was always interested in travel, writing, storytelling, history, and heritage in that space. But like a lot of people, I was not sure what would be the career prospect if I go that way. So I chose
Right.
economics, I chose finance, and I started working. But soon I realized that that is not really what I wanted to do. I'm not somebody who worked in finance for 10 years, made a lot of money, and then decided to shift. I think within 9 months, it was very clear to me that this is not what I wanted to do the rest of my life. But at the same time, I didn't know what I could do in this space, the travel blogging or travel influencers. This kind of route was not there back then in
Right.
2008 or 9. Um, Otherwise I could have done that, now that I think of it. So I took an internship in a magazine which was kind of dealing in the same space, art, heritage, culture, crafts of India. So the name of the magazine was Heritage India. So I joined that magazine as a as a marketing coordinator, and slowly got the hang of who is doing what. Uh, my job was to coordinate with a lot of people, get money for the magazine, which I realized very early on that there is no money in this space. So that was very clear. People were not ready to pay in any way. So but yeah, so my job was to get money, get visibility to the magazine, and that is how I got into this space where I started talking about heritage, history, art, tribes of India, their craft, and that is how I got into I got into research for documentary films. So I worked for Siddharth Kak, who is famous for his his serial Surabhi, as everybody know.
Yeah.
So he at that point around 2009-10, he was working, like his team was working on a documentary film series for National Geographic Channel, and the series
Mhm.
was covering a lot of handicrafts and arts and tribes, forts of India, animals of India, animal man conflict. You know, it was a series which handled a lot of very various kind of topics, and I joined as a researcher. So my first job was to research, provide research, coordinate for all these films, and luckily I got an opportunity to accompany the team for one of the films. It was set in Jaisalmer, so the film was about the Jaisalmer fort. I went
Oh, wow.
for the shoot, and I really liked the entire vibe of it. I really liked how my research. I sat in an AC office and did all the research, and
Mm.
all that research was right there in front of my eyes, and we shot it. We came back, and that film, when I saw my research was now, actually, like, physically, I could see the film, and I
Yeah.
was fascinated, and that is how I think I got into filmmaking, and especially documentary filmmaking. I will call it non-fiction filmmaking because it was not always documentary. So non-fiction filmmaking. So, but my forte was research. So I was a very good
Mm-hmm.
researcher, and uh, I would say that when you make a non-fiction film, what you actually doing as a researcher is trying to find visual elements in your research, or trying
Mm-hmm.
to tell a story, visually. So somebody
Yeah.
told you that, I make this craft. So how you will translate that information visually? Because you have to
Right.
show it, right? You cannot say it. You cannot tell this.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when you make a documentary film, they say that you show that it's an apple. You don't say that this is an apple. So your
Mm-hmm.
visuals have to tell a story. So my job was to tell a story through convert my research into a very compelling visual story. So that
Mm-hmm.
part of storytelling I really enjoyed. And since I was into research, and I was into storytelling, I used to bring a lot of people to Nasik. My professors, my colleagues, some strangers, friends, and I used to show them around Nasik. And because I was a researcher, my even back then, w- I mean, I never called it walking tour back then. It was just hospitality. You bring people and you show them around. So, but even back then, my walks were very informative. Even when I'm taking my friends or my family, for that matter. So they used to tell me that you should do it in Nasik, you should start walking tours in Nasik. But I had no plan to settle in Nasik. I was very happy working in Bombay at that point. But eventually, I decided to settle in Nasik. So in 2016, after 15 years away from the city, I finally decided to settle in Nasik. And after coming here, again, I kept telling people, somebody should do this. Somebody should start walking tours in Nasik. I used to tell them how I used to travel a lot for film, for documentaries. So wherever I went,
Mm-hmm.
I took walking tours, and I used to tell people somebody should do this in Nasik. And one fine day it stuck to me that I could be that somebody. Why should I wait for somebody to do it? I can only start it. So that is how I started conducting walking tours. And I used to travel a lot in these small lanes of Nasik, old Nasik, and Panchavati. Slowly, I also started documenting the city. And when I started the Instagram, like, I started Instagram just as a landing page. Anybody who is researching about what to do, things to do in Nasik should find my walking tour and should come to Instagram to check out, what I do and how I conduct the tours. But slowly, this Instagram page became my, where I started
Go
putting all
to.
my research. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and in the last 2 years, when the tours were not happening, we were all stuck inside our homes. I think I explored Instagram a lot. And that is how
Mm-hmm.
I think I met you. And that's why we are here and talking about it. So, this is my
Wow.
story, like gist of whatever I have been doing for last 20 years.
That's really fascinating. So, question number two is, what does heritage tourism mean to you and why does it excite you? You've already given us a brief answer for that,
Hmm.
but what keeps you going? I'm sure, as in during COVID, post COVID, what keeps you going?
First and foremost, I have my own ancestral house in Panchavati, in the old part.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up there. My grandparents lived there. Until recently, they were there. I mean, they passed away a few years ago. So I grew up there, and I have fond memories of those of that area. So I wanted to tell that story to everybody. So it started with that. So I was not thinking
Mm-hmm.
about heritage tourism and all these big words and conservation and all these big words. I seriously didn't think of it when I started. The main reason was to tell the story that I grew up with. And second point is, I realized that what I saw growing up was very
Mm.
unique to that part of the town, or that part of the country, I'll say. And it was like everyday life for me. The stone that you use constructing the
Mm.
temple, the architecture, whatever rituals you perform over there in Nasik, everything was part of my growing up, part of my childhood. So I never looked at
Mm.
it from a very third person's point of view. So when I
Mm.
started looking at it very objectively, I realized that there is so much to tell, there is so much to share, and people were finding it fascinating. I have hosted so many people coming from all over India, all over world actually, who for whom all my stories were fascinating. They had not seen the black stone that we have here. They had not seen so many things. They didn't know anything about Nasik actually. They knew
Mm.
that it's a pilgrimage, and it's they knew there is some connection of Nasik with Kumbh Mela, or Ramayan maybe, or maybe they knew about vineyards of Nasik, which is a heritage of Nasik, but it's quite recent. It's not that old. But they didn't
Mm.
know that city existed for thousands of years. It was on a trade route, and that's why it was a very cosmopolitan city since beginning. So when I started
Mm.
telling these stories, I think people were really fascinated, and I also started discovering more aspects of my own city. And I think heritage tourism is that for me, where I'm sharing these amazing stories with people, and I think people want to know. They want to know where they're traveling. They are conscious travelers. They want to know the
Yeah.
backstory of everything. They want to know
Yeah.
why this temple exists more than what is the architecture. Okay, you describe this is the architecture, this is North Indian style, this is Dravidian style. Yeah, this is all fine. But why this
Mm.
temple exists? Who constructed it? What was the reason? I think when I started telling the human stories behind all the temples and vadas, and whatever people do at the river, whatever rituals they perform, I think that is when a lot of people started responding to what I was talking. And I think that is heritage tourism for me, and that is what I am trying to talk about, I will say.
Yeah. In fact, Nashik, whatever little that I remember of Nashik, almost every nook and corner has some temple, small or big, that it boasts of. And I'm sure there is so much to tell and share,
Yeah,
considering there are so many spots. Almost every episode of Ramayana is touched in
true.
the temples of old Nashik, right? Yeah.
And one more thing I would like to mention here, that even though it's a temple city, there is so much more than just mythology and religion. So I always
Mm.
make sure that I tell people that, you have to look beyond, even if you're going to a temple, you have to look beyond mythology, you have to look beyond religion, you have to look beyond the rituals. There is so much more. There is, there is a history, there is stories of control, of power,
Mm-hmm.
economy, finance also.
Yeah.
You have a lot of stories in a temple. So when people
Yeah.
come, they only get to know that, oh, Ram used to sit here, Sita used to sit here. There's a Lakshman Rekha temple also, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of mythology and history has been intertwined a lot in Nasik. So
Mm.
separating it, and giving historical context to everything is actually quite fun. So I enjoy it a lot, actually.
Lovely. So question number 3. In your observation or experience, what are the gaps that you have observed in heritage studies in general?
Well, I have not studied heritage or history per se, so I can't really answer this question. But I think, like I told you, humanizing everything is very important, because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, who has created it? Who constructed these temples or vadas or beautiful architecture? Who did it? It was some man or woman who took that call, who hired other humans, and they did it. So I don't know what heritage studies are talking about, but from my personal experience as a researcher and a person who grew up in a heritage city, I would say that when you're talking about a building, I think just talking about the technicalities or technical information, I think humanizing it is very important. So, and giving what do you call it, a context. Like for example, this building was constructed in 1857. At the same time, what is happening in that person's life? For example, if a person has come from maybe West Bengal, so, and I'm talking about a building that was constructed in the 18th century, mid 18th century. So I always like to kind of tie it up with what was happening in Bengal at that point, because that
Yeah.
person has come from Bengal and he has his history and his heritage connection with that. So when I
Right.
put these two things together, oh, okay, like that. So that person also understands everything faster. So when
Right.
you try to connect everything to humans, I think that is
Mm.
something maybe it's missing. If I have to tell you like something, so that is something I think we should, even in textbooks, I think history textbooks, we should introduce a lot of human stories rather than just numbers, you know, because ultimately when we study history, we only remember the dates, or that is how we are, like we have to just
Right.
reproduce it
Absolutely.
in the answer sheet, this happened on this date, that happened on that date. But
Yeah.
finding the reason behind it, making it very human, I think that is something is missing, which I think I'm trying to solve this problem in my capacity.
That's amazing because it kind of limits your entire perspective to one particular thing. It could be a
True.
date or it could be just part of the story. But by
Hmm.
humanizing it, we probably look at the whole picture. And even different perspectives give you so much insight about different things. Like you mentioned economy, you mentioned trade routes that pass through Nashik, or how it must have held a very important role at some point.
True.
It's really, really, really fascinating. And yeah, I think it is a gap that, at a very basic level, we need to address. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so one important question that multiple people had was, why did you change your brand name from Urban Sarai to Nashik Heritage Trails?
I think I wanted Nashik in the name. And when I decided Urban Sarai, see, urban is urban. Sarai means there used to be these inns, small inns on
Hmm.
the trade route that connected east to the west. It went via Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan. So there used to be these inns where the traders used to take rest overnight. They would stay there. They would get rejuvenated, meet other traders, their camels, horses, whatever. They used to take rest, and then they used to continue their journey on the trade route. So that was the sarai. So we still have some sarais, actually Mughal Sarai and Begu Sarai. They were all on the trade route. So the idea was, urban sarai means somebody who is traveling, who's a traveler in modern sense. He comes to Nasik, which is like an urban city only, but he will stay back and enjoy his stay, get rejuvenated, and then go continue his
Hmm.
journey. So that was the idea behind this name. But then I thought that after like 2 years of being with the name, and I realized that I wanted something that would connect the name with the city
Hmm.
and give a very clear idea of what I do, because people, even though the name was like, I still liked the name, and even the name, a lot of people really resonated with it. But still, I was finding that there was a disconnect. Like they had to
Hmm.
ask me what I do. The name did not give it away. Like Nashik Heritage
Okay.
Trails is very straightforward,
Very
and
clear.
people would just, yeah,
True.
they would know that this is in this
Yeah.
space and this is expected from this company, or this organization. But Urban Sarai was not giving that very clear sign what I do, and I used to spend a lot of time explaining people what I do. So
Mm.
I still get a lot of calls, but I don't spend so much time now explaining
Yeah.
people what I do. A lot of time people do have an idea. They can guess from the name. They have read
Mm.
on Google. So
Mm.
otherwise, earlier I used to spend so much time just telling people what I do and what the name means actually. So what I do was a much later question. The first question, they wanted to understand the name only. So that is why I I changed it. And even though I like the name and the thought
Very
behind it
catchy.
was very, yeah, the thought
Yeah.
behind it was quite intense. But I think Nashik
Mm-hmm.
Heritage Trails works better for all practical reasons.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, what are the skills that are required to curate a heritage walk?
I think
So,
you need to be interested in people, I think. Uh,
the people you're taking around.
yeah, you should be
Okay.
interested in talking to people. Like, see, I am a very introverted person. I'm an introvert and I don't like to talk too much. But I like to know the stories of other people. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that has helped me a lot. And not just getting a lot of information about the city when I talk to people, but also when I talk to people who visit Nasik, from our conversations, our discussions, also I learn a lot. And that is how my walk is also evolving with each and every walk. I'm doing something new. I take feedback and I try to observe how people react to what I talk. And I think
Mm-hmm.
so. These observational skills, I will say, very important. See, ultimately, what happened in the history, it's very well documented. I'm not inventing history of Nasik. I'm not, I don't have the information that nobody has. Of course not. Everything is
Mm-hmm.
there. The temples are there. Everybody knows when it's constructed. Everybody knows everything actually. Or I would say, I don't know so much. There are some historians in Nasik, there are some journalists in Nasik who were also in the same field, working in the same field. They also conduct heritage walks. So I am in no way saying that I am the expert and I know everything. Each walk, I am discovering the city bit by bit. And I talk
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of people through DMs on Instagram. And
Okay.
even there, I'm getting a lot of information and I use that information in a walk. So I think talking to people is a good skill, I will say. And anybody who wants to be a good storyteller should first need to be a good listener. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that is one skill I have picked up as a researcher. So my job as a researcher for a documentary film was less talking, more listening. So I just have to listen to a lot of information, take the most relevant and interesting information, filter it again, find sources to validate it, and then
Mm-hmm.
I have to make sure that that research gets translated into a story, a documentary for a documentary. Yeah, uh, so I think to answer your question, I think uh, to conduct a good walking tour, I will say you have to be a good storyteller, and to become a storyteller, you have to be a good listener. And you have to be a people's person. When I say people's person, I don't mean that you have to be very, very flamboyant and you need to have very big social circle. I don't think so. I think people's person means you should like to talk to people and understand their
Create
perspective.
an atmosphere of comfort, I guess, where
Yeah,
everyone is sharing and
true.
enjoying the experience in their own
Yeah,
ways, but together.
yeah. One more thing
Yeah.
I'll say, physical fitness is very important because I walk for almost 3 hours. I talk
Yeah.
continuously. So I'm
Oh,
talking
yeah.
for 3 hours continuously from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock sometimes. I talk and I'm walking on uneven surface because it's old Nashik is it's very steep because
Mm-hmm.
all roads go to the river and they are very steep. So you are constantly
Mm-hmm.
going up and down. You go to the temples, you climb, you get down. So yeah, so I mean, of course, you need to be a very good storyteller. You need to have understanding of history and heritage, but at the same time, you need to have good lungs, and you should be, yeah. So I think that is very important because a lot of times, what happens is, I come home and I cannot talk for like 3 days. So many times, a lot of people will say, "Let's meet today," and I'm like, "No, I can't meet because I'm not able to talk because
Mm.
my voice is gone." So that also I have now managed like kind of figured out how where to talk and where to not talk. And there are some areas they are very polluted because there are these tiny
Uh-huh.
lanes. So pollution can't go anywhere, it stays there.
Mm.
So now I have figured how to take care of my health also while I conduct walks. So
Wow, that's
yeah.
quite insightful actually. It
Yeah.
doesn't strike someone who's working from, a confined office space or whatever.
Hmm.
These are the things that go, as in, it'll come only with experience on field,
True.
on the job.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
used to my initially when I started taking walking tools, I used to come home and my throat used to pain, like actual, like it used to pain, and I
Oh.
never understood it. I didn't speak so much. Then
Mm.
what is happening? Then I realized that it's pollution. So the
Mm-hmm.
old cities, because they are so congested, the pollution does not go away. It stays there.
Correct.
So
Like a
even if
dust
you
bowl.
take,
Even Pune is like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now what I do is I start early before traffic begins. So and I try to avoid those areas where there is a lot of pollution. So yeah, this is a very practical thing, but you need to consider these things.
Yeah. Good. So, what are the challenges to make tourists understand about local culture? As in
Mm, hmm.
from a storyteller or a local guide or someone who's taking meeting so many people, what are the challenges you feel in making some outsider, for lack of a better term right now,
Hmm.
make them understand about the local culture?
I think connecting it with their own heritage and their own history, like I told you. So juxtapositioning, what their life has been and what the city's history has been. Like I told you, somebody
Mhm.
who's come from
Bengal.
yeah. So and I'm talking about 18th century Maharashtra.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
if I know a little bit about what was happening there, I can
Mhm.
always have a comparative analysis, what they say, and just explain what was going on at that point back in Bengal and in Maharashtra, how these two things are connected, how uh, the kings and queens of Maharashtra, how they were connected with, the kings and queens maybe there. So just an example, I'm not exactly talking about West Bengal, but I think telling a story that connects the history of that particular person, or where he comes from or she comes from. I think that is a good way to make people understand what was going on. So, for example, I'll give you a real example. A lot of Jain families come to Nasik, and
Mhm.
not because they want to come to Nasik for their pilgrimage, general, as a tourist, but
Okay.
Nashik has been a very important seat for Jainism. So Nasik has been ruled by Jain kings also. There are very important pilgrimage sites for Jains. Now people don't know this. And so
Mm.
when I know that this person is Jain, I talk to them about, do you know, have you heard of this? Do you know about Anjaneri, where there are so many Jain temples? And
Mm.
they are really sure, they are shocked because they don't know this. They just come to Nasik, but when I connect the history of the city with their own history and past, I
Mm.
think everything comes alive for them. So there is a small museum in the center of the city, in a 18th century Peshwa Wada, and
Mhm.
there you'll find a lot of Jain idols and statues, and all the carvings and all preserved there. And when I take people there, then they realize, oh my God, yeah, this is real. Like this is very real. You can see it there. This is not just a story or history. You can
Mm.
actually see that these people were here, and Nashik, and suddenly you feel that, oh my God, I belong here. And
Mm.
I have heard people talk like this. These are not my words actually. So there was this one Jain family who had come from Bombay, and they could actually find some roots of their family in Nasik. and
Wow.
and suddenly they realize, oh my God, yeah, my this and this uncle used to talk a lot about Nasik. So I think connecting people's history, personal histories, with the history of the place is something Um, I think it's not a challenge. I think it's just fun. I will put it that way.
Yeah, but you have to be alert and thinking on your feet all the time, and there is obviously a lot of
Yeah,
prep that goes in. Individual people, you're
true.
curating your trails individually almost. That's
Because
amazing.
this is not just very recent. I have been doing this for 20 years. So since I was
Mm-hmm.
a researcher, this was my job, and I was a hardcore researcher, and this was actually my job to finding stories. So I will say that I was trained to do this. So it's like a doctor. He's trained to perform a surgery. Even if you ask him in the middle of the night how to do this surgery, he or she might be able to tell you. So it's like that. It comes naturally when you're trained to think like a storyteller. So yeah, it's fun actually. So like I said, I'm also learning a lot when I meet people on the walking tours. I think I also learn a lot from them. And this connecting the dots is something a researcher is supposed to do, and that is
Mm-hmm.
what is helping me now. Very, very subconsciously, actually. I don't think I do it very consciously. It just I'm trained to do.
Nice, wonderful. That's some good trading, I would say. As in
Yeah.
how you have how you have applied what you have learned so beautifully,
True.
and you're able to dissect it and tell us that, you know, from your voice till individual experiences. That is also a skill, actually. Yeah. So, is there an ideal tourist? What are your best experiences with
I think
tourists?
a tourist which is not generalizing everything. Like there is one British man who asked me, "Oh, so do you eat curry? Indians in UK they eat curry." So yeah, I mean, I'm like I lose interest in such people actually immediately. So don't generalize thing. India is a country of how many 100 crores? No, 140 crores now. So each
Yeah.
and every person is different. You cannot generalize something.
Hmm.
And so yeah, so I'm when people say those things, I just lose interest. I'm like, okay, whatever, let it be curry or whatever it is. So yeah, so generalizing is something it's a put off for me.
But what's the thing that you look forward to then?
I think somebody who is open minded, somebody who is not constantly trying to find something to criticize.
Find a box to
So
put things
I
in. Yeah.
personally, I take people to a lot of temples and to the ghat where all the rituals are happening. So I tell people
Hmm.
to be open-minded. Don't try to conclude anything. Don't try to derive anything. Don't try to find any kind of like you should just understand what people are doing and without really criticizing anything. So I think if if the person is open-minded, I think I also enjoy that kind of walk, and I try to make it more interesting. But if somebody is constantly trying to criticize whatever he's seeing, then I think that's not an ideal tourist. An ideal
Hmm.
human, actually, not just tourist. I think whenever we
Agreed.
travel, better to have open mind, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you believe in God or not, actually. So
Hmm.
you have to just feel the vibe. That's what I feel.
Absolutely. And what is special about Nashik for you, who has seen it for so many years now?
Mm. I think whatever the old city of Nasik has a very distinct look. That
Hmm.
that is very special for me. And because Nashik has been on the trade route for many, many, many centuries, or I will say thousands of years. Not exactly the main city, but there are these small places outside the city. They have found evidence that they were on the trade route. They were marketplaces.
Hmm.
So I think that is something I really like to explore myself, and I like to share also with people because people don't know. See, like I told you, connect. So even
Hmm.
today, Nashik is on the trade route. So Bombay Agra road that we call the
Yeah.
very important road in Nashik. That is a trade route. So even today, Nashik is on trade route. So because it was on trade route, there are two other trade routes that Nashik was on. The one that goes from Burhanpur to Surat, or the one that connected the port.
Mm-hmm.
So Nashik has been on the trade route, and that's why there was so much migration that happened. A lot of trading families, a lot of traders came from Gujarat and Rajasthan and settled in Nashik. So Nashik has a very distinct, very cosmopolitan look, and I think that is something I like to. I personally really like the vibrant markets of Nashik, and that particular look is only because it's like a melting pot. There are Bohri Muslims, they have a lane. Right next to them, there is Saraf Bazaar. Right next to that, there is Bhandi Bazaar. Then there is Cloth Market. So
Mm-hmm.
there is like this mixture of all the cultures and languages and people coming from different parts of India with their, craft.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so there are these silver craftsmen. They are there, and then there is this coppersmiths. Even though now they all have different professions, but Nasik was famous at some point of time for that. So I think this vibrant markets and the look, because of the black stone that we have used a lot. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is something I personally really enjoy when I go to that area.
Great. So, what efforts should be taken to take the heritage of Nashik on a more national platform, or maybe even international platform?
I think people need to start talking about it. And a lot of talk is happening, but it's in Marathi. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, it's my mother tongue, and I have nothing against it. But I think if you want other people to know what your
Okay.
city is about, what is your heritage, then I think you need to tell this in a language that is understood by more people on international
Mm-hmm.
level. So I think
Mm-hmm.
very basic, very first step is to start talking about your heritage. Don't lose an opportunity to talk about it. Wherever you can, you should be able to talk. Now, after I started my Instagram handle, I was
Mm-hmm.
not like I was not thinking that I'm connecting with so many people, but people started reacting to it that, oh, we didn't know this is in Nasik. We didn't know Nasik has this. We didn't know Nasik has so many temples. And oh, we didn't know about this stone. We didn't know about the craft that Nasik has. So I think until and unless you start talking and telling your
Mm-hmm.
own story, people will not know. And either they will not know or somebody else will come and start telling your story. Then you have no control of your narrative. So if you want
Mm-hmm.
to have control over your narrative, your story, then you need to tell this. So I tell this to everybody that, you need to start talking. And until and unless you start talking about your heritage, the international, forget international, even national level, they will not take cognizance of it. So you need to start talking and keep talking. And maybe not me, maybe my next generation will benefit from it, but I think talking is very important. So that is the basic and very first step that anybody should take, and not just people from Nasik. I think all the tier 2 and tier 3 cities in India, I think they all should start talking about their own heritage. And I think Instagram or Facebook is a good start.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I can talk about very big things like, they should be in UNESCO World Heritage and blah, blah, blah. And I think it should be the old part of Nasik and uh, Panchavati. They should be part of World Heritage, UNESCO World
Mm-hmm.
Heritage. But yeah, I think to achieve that, I think we should start talking about it. And then somebody will take notice and then we can take this forward. So, first, you know, let us start talking about our city. I think that's very important.
That's true. I'm not sure if the heritage sector feels this, but in technical fields, definitely, and also in history now, there is this big disconnect between the academicians or people who are working. They seem to be in this different silo from general public, and there is this
Hmm.
huge gap, and
Hmm.
there is no one trying to reach out to the either side,
True.
and the onus is on us who are actually working in the field to reach out to people and talk more and more. But somehow that
True.
doesn't seem to happen as much as it should.
I, I think we need to be generalists than experts. That's what I
True.
feel.
I
And
agree.
I personally take a lot of efforts to remain a generalist and not go in one direction.
Yeah.
I want to be able to connect with a lot of different communities and castes and language people who speak different languages. So
Absolutely.
I think that's the only way to be a chronicler, actually, if I have to put
Mm.
a word to it. How to
Yeah.
chronicle the city. I think you have to be able to connect with a lot of different people who talk different language, and not, when I say language, means language, but
Yeah.
in general the language of their craft, their culture, their
Mm.
living, their food. So
Yeah.
I think being a generalist helps, and it has
Yeah.
helped me a lot. So I have
Yeah. Very
always
well put, actually.
tried to you know remain a generalist and not become an expert of anything, and that has helped me in many ways. It has also played a very it's a deterrent where uh I like, see, for example, if you call me a heritage expert, I'm not. But at the same time, I do have a house which is a heritage house and which is right in the center of the old part. So I talk from that emotion, and I talk
Mm.
from a person who actually has those problems to solve. So,
Mm.
so I think it's sometimes it helps to not to be an expert, actually.
Yeah. 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 So, in on our list, we are on the last question. So,
Okay.
what are the advantages or disadvantages of Kumbh Mela that is seen on the culture of Nashik?
Very easy to answer this question. So advantages, we get hundreds and thousands of crores of rupees. Okay. And the disadvantages, we get hundreds and thousands of crores of rupees. So yeah, so advantage and disadvantage both
Is the
are the same.
money that flows
Yes.
in?
Yeah. So
So
we get
how is that
money.
a disadvantage?
Disadvantage because people have no clue how to spend so much money. Can you imagine these bureaucrats who have like decent salary and very decent kind of funding, suddenly they get 1,000 crore and they have to spend it. It's
Mm.
humanly impossible, and you cannot even think how to spend it. So you just spend it.
Mm.
Okay, you put concrete in the riverbed. You construct bridges where they're not necessary. You construct roads, when where it's not necessary. So you just want to show that you have got the money and you've spent it. And I don't
Mm.
even blame them. I think it's, how do you even spend so much money? So, and you don't really do planning for 10, 12 years and then you execute. You start planning and execution just 2 to 3 years before the Kumbh Mela. So ultimately,
Mm.
when you have to spend money, you are like, you are in a hurry, and then
Mm.
at that point you don't have time to think. So what I feel is, you have to actually plan and spend money for 11 years, so that in the
Right.
12th year you have a good, well planned city, and so that whatever you do in 11 years is again maintained properly, and it works for your city for the next 11 years. So,
Right.
so every time you get 1,000 crores and you just quickly spend it somehow, just get done with it, urukun taka, you know
Mm.
karun taka, this language comes into play. So getting so much money is a problem, and getting so much money is a boon also.
Boom. Mm.
But then the planning should happen on a very, very long term basis, and not within like a year or two. So I think this 12-year planning, if you do, then I think it's a boon. Otherwise, it's a curse.
So an
I hope
add-on
that,
question to that would be
yeah.
that I have is that there are so many people coming in every 12 years. So is the city kind of overflowing at its seams, or does it take in those people? Are tourists welcome in a very general sense, as in, or is it something that the locals find difficult to, as in they have to change their way around
Yeah,
the
the
Mela?
roads are shut. The roads are shut during those important days, like the Shahi Snan days. Shahi Snan
Yeah.
is the is those auspicious timings where you have to take a dip. But the
Mm,
local people would not go there at that point. I think it's for all the dignitaries and all the akhadas and all the sadhus. So yeah,
mm,
but I think people of Nashik are okay with that. They are not. They are okay. They don't. I mean, of course, for those days, it's difficult to maneuver in the city, but I think
mm.
they have accepted it. It's a part and parcel of
Yeah,
living
right.
in Nashik. So I don't think they have a problem on that front. The problem is spending that money and putting concrete in everything and showing that you have done the work and you have spent the money very hastily. That also, I think,
Mm-hmm.
then later on we have to face the brunt. So
Yeah.
now they are trying to take the concrete out of the riverbed. So whoever put it there, why he did it, if after few years you're going to take it out. So now the JCB machines, if you go to the Godavari Ghat,
Mm,
you'll see these huge JCB machines. They're taking the concrete out now. So what they did was they put the concrete on the riverbed, and the natural sources of water, they completely blocked them.
that's
Okay.
them.
So
Okay.
now
Mm,
suddenly they have woken up to this problem, and now they are saying, "Ki chalo, now let's take it out."
mm,
So this kind of things keep happening. If you go to that area and sit there, you'll see a lot of these things happening. Like somebody comes, does something after a few years, somebody comes and says, no, no, this is not done, this is wrong, this is not good for the environment, remove it. Then again they
mm.
remove it. So I think what Indians in general lack is they lack the ability to plan and think
Yeah.
for longer duration. They want quick fixes. I think it's in our blood.
The
So I
Jugaad.
don't know how to deal with it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
this jugad is the word I hate the most. So you see a lot
Okay.
of jugad when Kumbh Mela comes. So
Yeah.
they want to
Yeah.
do it quick, so the city suffers.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that's the disadvantage and advantage of having one of the biggest events of the history
In the
of
country.
India. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, I think I have had a great time having this
Yeah, me too.
question and answer session, and we hopefully will connect for some more events or some other seminars or on various occasions. I look
Yeah, and
forward to
you're also
meeting
planning
you.
to come to Nashik. I
Yes,
hope
yes,
you go ahead with that plan and we meet in
yes. I
person.
hope so too. Yes, absolutely.
Because I have met in last 2 years, I have met so many people on Instagram that I feel that I know them and I connect with them, but we have never met. So
Right.
finally, I think now that the pandemic is hopefully over, we should all meet each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I really look forward to coming down to Nashik and meeting you and seeing all the wonderful things and listening to all the stories that you have to tell. So
Please do plan.
yes, I will now end the live
Yeah.
and we stay in touch.
Yes. I just want to see one comment I didn't read actually.
Oh, there are a lot
Uh,
of compliments. Yeah, one second.
yeah, Preeti has said something. Post on Instagram. Yeah. I started taking Instagram seriously much later, actually, during the pandemic when there was nothing to do, and
Mm-hmm.
my job is not work from home, so I have to go out. So when the pandemic hit, Ume, yeah, glad to see something like this in Nasik. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's it. Yes. So I think that is when I started taking Instagram seriously, and I think it's a good medium to connect with people, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot more personal, I feel, than
Yeah,
doing. So Facebook is more like a broadcast wherein
true.
you don't reach out, whereas Instagram is more one-on-one and
More
personal,
intimate. Yeah,
more intimate. Yeah, yeah,
true.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.